Okay, folks, so this is the chance to check if you're in the right place. So this session is how to really learn a language with Netflix with me, Cara Leopold. So if this is where you're supposed to be, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. We'll start in about 2-3 minutes. So just in the meantime, why does it show? I want to see my head. Okay, sorry, I'm just playing with my video. While you are waiting then, you can tell us in the chat where you are, where you're watching from, because I can actually monitor the chat at the moment, so this will be quite nice. And then I'll feel less lonely. Oh, hello, we've got someone from South Korea. Oh, brilliant. Okay, Cambridge. Stan is in Essex. Cool. All right, Marie-Odine sounds like she's not originally from Cambridge, but I could be wrong. Got Caroline, great. This is good. It makes me feel less lonely. Thank you. I can't see all your beautiful faces, so I need to have I need to see your chat messages. Bonjour Bérangère. Claire says ciao from Tuscany. Okay, Marie-Odile is originally from Finistère. Okay, that's the opposite side of France to where I live, because I'm in France. And if you like, you can tell us what you like to watch in the languages you're learning. Cool, we've got Moira from Scotland, got someone from York, someone in London. Okay, you have family in the east of France, cool. We'll talk more about that in a second. I'm just having my cup of tea as well, just so that I can talk for the next half hour. Ellen's in Spain. Hello, Ellen. Got Luke from Buckinghamshire. I'm not going to read them all out. You can see them too. Any favorite movies or TV shows you want to mention? Or if you just want to tell us where you're from, that's fine too. I'm really glad there are people here. That reassures me. Okay, we've got Crown and Peaky Blinders. Yeah, okay, nice one. Freemies, I don't know what those are. Okay, but ones that are not too gruesome. Okay, something gruesome. Oh, wow, Janet's learning Welsh. Yeah, films are more difficult, Janet. We're going to talk about that. 10%. I don't really, yeah, I'm not really very good with like quality French TV series. I watch a lot of trashy French TV personally. So I haven't seen 10%. I watch a lot of American shows dubbed into French. That's my secret. Okay, German. Oh yeah, Tatort. I have heard of that actually, even though I'm not really a fan of German TV shows. Les Miserables. Okay, cool. All right, I'm just keeping an eye on the time because I'm going to get started. I said I would start like maybe 3 minutes in. Bonjour Valérie. Oh yeah, Montalbano. That's a fan favorite, isn't it? So during the session, I'm on my own, so I can't really monitor the chat kind of once the session gets going. Like you can talk to yourselves if you want to, but I won't be able to see it. If you have questions, we'll have time for questions at the end. In addition to the chat, there's also a Q&A tab. So if you have an actual question, it would be really good if you could put it in the Q&A, and then I can see it at the end. Whereas I think if a question is in the chat, I probably won't see it. So you can use the Q&A for that. And then also in your little Zoom bar thing, there should be a reactions button. It would be really cool if during the session, when I can't look at the chat, if you could use reactions, not raise hand, that's something else. We might be able to use that for the questions actually. There's a reactions button somewhere and it lets you like send me emojis or something. So if you can find that, and if during the session you want to like send some emojis, that would be really nice. Okay, somebody wants movies for ESL students. Okay, we'll get into all that kind of thing. So I'm going to get started just very quickly telling you who I am. So I'm an English teacher. I specialize in teaching listening skills because I want to help people understand native speakers so they can connect better with them. And that kind of comes from me living abroad. So I live in France and I've been here for 15 years. And so my French is quite good at this point, and it really helps me to feel integrated and to feel like I belong, and it enables me to do basically everything I want in French, which is really cool. So yeah, that's why I like to help people who are expats or travelers who have a lot of contact with native speakers. And I actually have a movie club for English learners. And I've also created courses to help them with their listening skills. So my background is in teaching English, but I've also had various like unsuccessful attempts at using movies to learn other languages. So I'm going to share my mistakes and then also the like good stuff I've figured out to help my students as well. So there's going to be examples of, you know, what not to do and then what works better. So if that sounds good, we can get started. Gosh, if someone could find the action button, that would be even better, and then I would know. Okay, so the title of the session is how to really learn a language with Netflix. So there's 9 parts, and I've tried to make them slightly cryptic so that you won't fall asleep. You'll want to keep listening. So we're going to talk about these 9 different things: the sweet spot, the Reconnaissance Mission, unconscious incompetence, smart subtitle strategies, the shorter the better, the notebook, not the movie, unfortunately, movies are better together, why do they talk so fast, and tech magic. So that's our agenda for today. So let's get into it, and then you'll know what the hell I'm talking about for all these different topics. So the sweet spot. So when you are watching movies and TV shows for the purposes of language learning, in theory, you could watch anything in the target language, right? But if you want to watch something that's going to actually help you learn the language, then there are some things you need to take into consideration. So I made this little Venn diagram. So one aspect is what you actually enjoy watching, so what you're motivated to watch. So already in the chat in the beginning, people were talking about, you know, German crime scene dramas versus, I don't know, other type versus watching the news, for example, right? So we all have different preferences and different things that we enjoy watching. So that's something you need to take into account when you're thinking about what you want to watch in the target language. There's also what you need to understand. So, you know, there could be an argument for some people, if they need, for example, medical English or something like that, they may be better spending their time watching Grey's Anatomy or something like that, some kind of medical TV series. And you also need to take into account your level. So obviously you can't watch the same things when you are sort of at an intermediate level or when you're at an advanced level, and certainly not at the beginning level. But if you can kind of get the balance right between these 3 areas, then you'll find your sweet spot for a series. And I just mentioned this as well because sometimes like people, you know, they just go with what they've heard of. So like, oh, I'm learning German, everyone's talking about Dark, I should watch that. But just because it's in German doesn't mean it's necessarily, you know, your sweet spot. And what I think is really cool about the streaming services is that like the algorithm gets to know you, you know, the algorithm, as you kind of watch things and it kind of learns what you're into. The algorithm will actually suggest things that it thinks you will like. So let the algorithm help you with this aspect of choosing what to watch. So that's my first thing to take into consideration. Find your sweet spot. Find the right thing to watch for you by getting a kind of balance between all these different aspects. And we'll talk more about how you can do that in the rest of the session. Okay, another way to make your language learning with TV series and movies more effective is to prepare yourself, right? To go on a reconnaissance mission. Because, you know, sometimes when you watch like the first 10 minutes of a movie, even in your native language, it kind of feels like somebody has just thrown you out of a helicopter in the middle of nowhere and you have to make your way back to civilization. So what I mean is you don't understand what's going on. You know, like the first 10 minutes can be really confusing because you don't know who the characters are. You might not know the context. Like everything is kind of confusing. So to kind of reduce that feeling of, oh my God, I've just been dropped out of a helicopter, middle of nowhere, don't know where I'm going. There's some basic things you can do just to prepare yourself. Okay, so maybe you don't need to do this in your native language, but for language learning, this can be useful and it doesn't need to take long. So, I mean, the most basic thing you can do, and this will also help you for finding a series that's suitable for you or a movie, just watch the trailer. If you watch the trailer and you're like, oh my God, this is way too hard, then, well, that's useful information. So recently with my students, we had to choose between watching two Coen brothers movies, either True Grit or The Big Lebowski. And if you're familiar with True Grit, you'll know that it's a Western and the accents are really difficult. So I was like, I don't think we should do this one because I don't think it's going to be that useful for you. And I think it's going to be too hard. Another place you can go is Wikipedia, or probably I would start with the IMDb page. So the IMDb page, the Internet Movie Database page, has the trailer. It has like a one-line synopsis. It has the names of the characters. Even just knowing like the names of the characters, even just the main character can really help. Wikipedia has a really detailed plot summary. So you could maybe use that after you've watched the movie to check that you actually understood what people were talking about, right? Did you actually follow it correctly? Other things you can do are go on YouTube and find interviews with the actors or the director where they talk more about the movie. Also, YouTube is a goldmine of video essays. So people like analyze movies on YouTube, and I give this kind of material to my students as well before they watch films. And it's like going to film school. You know, I'm not really a film specialist, but I use these very smart people on YouTube who have film analysis channels, and that really helps me out. And you can, of course, read reviews. Although, again, you might want to do that after you've watched and not before, because reviews often contain spoilers. So, like, prepare yourself, basically, is what I'm saying here. Okay. Our third thing, right, that's going to help us is knowing about the stages of learning, right? So when you first start learning something, you're in a stage of what we call unconscious incompetence. So you don't actually know what you don't know. Like, you're so ignorant, you don't even know what you're doing wrong, right? So this is often the case when people watch movies, especially movies, but also TV series in the language they're learning. They're in a state of unconscious incompetence. So you're watching it and you know, okay, you don't understand it. Maybe you can only get 50% of it or 30% or whatever, but you don't know why, right? So you don't know, and you don't know why. You can't understand what's going on, right? And we want to get to a situation where you have conscious incompetence, right? So this is actually better. This is the next level. This is where you know what you don't know. So to get us from, I don't know what I don't know, to, now at least I know what I don't know, you can do a really simple activity. And so some people might recognize this as a dictation. You can call it a listening and writing exercise if dictation is not a nice term that you like to use. So really here, we're just taking a really short section. So when I say short, I'm talking like 5 to 10 seconds, really a short burst of speech, right? Burst, I nearly knocked over my microphone. A very short section of speech that you found hard to understand, and you're going to try writing it out. So the goal here is, you know, if you can write it out perfectly and you understood it all, well, you know, you obviously either you have a higher level than you think, or you chose something to watch that's a bit too easy for you. It's normal here to have like gaps, or to mishear something, and or to write a nonsense word because you're not sure. So this is absolutely fine. These mistakes actually help you to become consciously incompetent. Because afterwards you're going to check your work with the subtitles. So that's the beauty of movies and TV series. They come with subtitles so we can check our work. So I'm talking here about you're using target language audio and you're checking with target language. subtitles. And this way, you're going to start to see, okay, so now I can see what I missed. Did I miss a word because it's a new word? Did I miss this because it's a word I know, but it sounds different? Or it's a group of words I know and they kind of blend together. Like now you can start to become more aware of what's preventing you from understanding. And so I use this technique with my students because it's a way for me to get into their brains and know kind of what they did or didn't understand. And their mistakes are really interesting. Sometimes people make the same mistakes. It's really interesting to watch. Or so start doing this. You can start doing this yourself. So it doesn't have to be a long thing to do. It can be, short bursts of speech, just a few seconds, and then just listen a few times. Don't go crazy. Sometimes people say, oh, you should transcribe like a minute of audio, and that's really, really tough. Here, I'm just talking about a few seconds, maybe a few times during the movie. That's enough to start becoming aware of why you don't understand. Okay, so speaking of subtitles, so here I mentioned we can use the subtitles to check our listening and writing tasks and to become more aware of what we don't understand and why. So let's talk a bit more about subtitles. So here I'm talking about, I use the word subtitles. I think some people might call these closed captions. So I'm talking about listening to target language audio and having the subtitles in the target language. I'm not really going to talk about using English subtitles because I do it with my students, but they're learning English, so that's different. So the way to think of subtitles is that they're just a tool. So they're a tool to check your work. It's a tool to get feedback, to know, what did I miss here, right? What's going on? And very simply, when you're watching a film or TV series, the subtitles are there to help you. So if a particular scene is difficult or a character's accent is difficult or they speak fast or whatever, just put them on, don't make it some sort of, I don't know, moral failing or something to need to use them. It's hard to watch movies and TV shows in another language. So it's totally normal that you would need help. And the subtitles can give you that help. I have a colleague, Elfin, from All About Italian. She gave me a lovely tip a few years ago now, and which is subtitles on, subtitles off. So it's as simple as it sounds. So while you're watching something, you can just decide, instead of having the subtitles on all the time or off all the time, this is kind of a middle ground where you would maybe put the subtitles on for 5 minutes and then turn them off for 5 minutes. So 5 minutes where you've got that support, where you're maybe reading, and then 5 minutes where you don't have the subtitles, maybe you're a bit more lost, but you're actually watching what's happening. So maybe, the things you're seeing on screen are helping you to understand what you might be missing without the subtitles. And the good thing about subtitles is about subtitles and about watching movies and TV series in general, that's connected to that last point, is because you have the visual input, you have, what you see on the screen, you have the characters' body language, lip movements, all these other clues, non-linguistic clues. You don't need to understand 100%. I find 80% is kind of a good goal. So if you can understand 80% of the movie dialogue, that's the stage where you can turn the subtitles off and you'll fill in the gaps, the other 20%, with what you're seeing on screen. So you don't even need 100%. You should aim for that 80% is a good level to get to, but I know it takes a while to get to that. It's that 80% level. But in the meantime, let the subtitles help you. And even at that 80% level, you might need to use them occasionally as well, just for some extra support. Okay. So I mentioned before that movies and TV series can be hard to watch. This is why we need things like subtitles. We need to take the time to prepare ourselves before we watch them. We need to find our sweet spot and find something that works for us. So I said I would talk about my mistakes. So a while back now. I think it was when I was still living in the UK. I started experimenting with learning Portuguese, right? So I already spoke, French, and I'd studied Spanish at that point. So, adding another Romance language, it's not like the most challenging thing in the world, right? And at the time, so it was in like the 2000s, there was this quite famous Brazilian movie called City of God that came out, right? So at that time, I wasn't really aware that I needed to find the sweet spot, right? I was just like, oh, here's a movie. If I watch a movie, I'll get immersion in Brazilian Portuguese, and like everyone's talking about this movie, so let's watch it, right? Okay, so I mean, really ridiculous for somebody who's sort of a beginning Portuguese learner. But anyway, right, we all have to make our mistakes and learn from them. So obviously City of God, if people are familiar with it, happens in the favelas in Rio. And so the language is really specific, right, to that part of Rio de Janeiro. And so it's just totally unsuitable for a Portuguese beginner, right? I mean, I can tell you that right now, like it's just not useful to watch this kind of thing. It's just, you're just going to not understand, right? And, had I known, so now I know a bit more about, using TV series as opposed to movies, and I'm a bit more aware of Brazilian culture and stuff like that. So I know that in Brazil, telenovelas are really popular, right? So these are these sitcoms, and, they're serialized, and there's loads and loads of episodes. So if I could go back in time, I would be like, okay, don't use this movie, which is really hard, and the language is going to be irrelevant for you as a beginner, but rather like go and watch some telenovelas because they're probably going to be easier to follow, and there's tons of episodes, and you can just keep watching them until you kind of get it. So all that to tell you that, like, often, movies are going to be too ambitious for some of us, depending on our level. So we should be aiming to watch kind of the next level down, which is TV series, or even just clips from movies or clips from TV series. So there are tons of these on the internet. There's a movie clips channel for licensed clips from like Hollywood films. That's a really cool channel. You can also go onto the channels of TV networks. So HBO has a channel, and on that channel you can find things like official clips from Game of Thrones. Netflix has a YouTube channel, so on that there you can also find clips from different series. And then of course trailers can be, really, really fun to use for language learning, to have something a bit more accessible, right? Because at least if it's short, you can watch it again. You can watch it as many times as you need. You can watch it to the point where you understand everything eventually. And what I like about TV series is if you find something you enjoy watching on a regular basis, then you've kind of cracked the mystery, because if you're motivated to keep watching it and it's at the right sort of level and it's the language you need, then all you have to do is just keep watching, just keep showing up, and you'll get used to the vocabulary, you'll get used to the characters' accents. You'll basically be able to follow it if you keep going. And I think that's the problem with movies is, it's just that one kind of 2-hour session that can be quite intensive. Whereas with TV series, you might just be watching 20 minutes at a time. And particularly if you've reached an intermediate level, that is probably, it's probably closer to your sweet spot than trying to concentrate on a whole movie for, an hour and a half, 2 hours. Whereas watching, 20-minute episodes, especially if it's something kind of light and concrete, like a sitcom, very grounded in everyday life, where what's going on screen gives you a lot of clues as to what people are saying, then that can really be perfect for, going further and actually learning the language from watching that series, because you'll be hearing, in TV series, they have catchphrases, people say the same things every week. I don't know why I've got Big Bang Theory coming into my head. Sheldon says bazinga, there's just there's just this kind of like, there's built-in repetition, and then all you have to do is just follow the story and keep coming back regularly to watch it. So prefer shorter things, right? And if you like movies, you don't need to abandon them, but think about maybe using clips or working with trailers, just so that you make it a bit easier for yourself, because whole movies can be tricky. So you may want to wait until later. And also, around the time I was playing around with City of God, I was also trying to watch whole movies in French when I was at sort of intermediate level, and they didn't have subtitles because I was watching video cassettes, and it was just too hard. And I just made myself miserable because I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand much. So just to give you an example of, so I mentioned the Movie Clips channel. So I like this one because, I mean, obviously there are a lot of clips from movies on YouTube, but this channel actually has like official licensed clips. So they're not going to like get removed, in a couple of weeks. Sometimes people just put clips up and they don't have the rights to them, and then they disappear or whatever. And another good thing on the Movie Clips channel is that it's not always the case, but often the subtitles are accurate. So meaning that so on YouTube, you've got the auto-generated subtitles, which often contain a lot of mistakes. And then you actually have the human generated subtitles, right? It's not the algorithm who made the subtitles. It's actually like a human who went in and added timestamps and corrected the spelling and everything. So here's an example from that channel. Coen Brothers movie. We're very big on watching Coen Brothers movies in my world. And we wanted to watch the Hudsucker Proxy, very hard movie to track down on the internet. However, on Movie Clips, they have these beautiful subtitled videos that I was really looking forward to using with my students, because when the video is subtitled like this, then they can do their dictation exercises and they can get the correction. So it really, really helps. So this is a feature you might not know on YouTube, actually. So, if you want the subtitles, yes, you can click the CC button, the closed captions button on the screen. Or if you click the 3 dots under a video, and then you click, this box will come up, right? There's some new features on YouTube. There's this clip function, which is really cool for clipping dictations for people. If you click on show transcript, so you may not know this, but YouTube does actually provide interactive transcripts, a bit like the TED Talk transcripts. So as people are talking, this gray bit flashes up so you can see what line it corresponds to. And then you can click on any line to play it again. So it's really cool for language learning. You can go in and you can repeat bits. And obviously I would say this is an easier way to check your work. If you've been, doing sort of dictation type activities, you can just go and open up this transcript. I think it's a bit easier than clicking on the, the subtitles button, right? You can sort of navigate it more easily. You can even copy and paste it into another document. If you're teaching, you can grab the transcript and, you can create a gap fill activity. I do that sometimes. So clips are wonderful. Play around with movie clips, especially if you've maybe seen the movie already, dubbed into your language, and then you go and grab some clips from it and start playing with them. You already know the story, so it's just, you're now just using it really for language learning, just testing how much of it you can understand. So yeah, I think for a lot of us, for a long time, we're not going to be able to cope with whole movies, but we can use clips to help us, and TV series. Okay, number 6. I'm conscious that I can see the little red of the chat button. I really want to click on it, but I'll keep going. Okay, The Notebook. So not the Ryan Gosling movie. I'm so sorry. We're not going to watch The Notebook together in this session, but I just want to talk about like kind of the psychology of watching TV series and movies for language learning, because I think we kind of assume it's going to be like this, right? So when we watch a TV series or a movie in our own language, obviously we have, what's the word? Unconscious competence, right? So we talked about unconscious incompetence earlier, but when you're a native speaker of a language, you have like unconscious competence. So you just understand everything pretty much, and you don't even know why, right? It's wonderful, isn't it? You just like, so obviously you can go home after work, tired, whatever, it doesn't matter. You can lie on the couch like this and you can watch a movie, and it really is like zero effort, okay? And so I think we kind of expect in our head that watching a movie, I don't know why, like it just ends up stressful and hard, frustrating. You want to give up, you don't want to do it, right? And I think we kind of need to change our expectations and our mindset around like what it means to use movies and TV shows to learn a language. So it requires kind of another sweet spot between the two situations, kind of being totally relaxed and then being like stressed and fed up. So we want to kind of like have, excuse me, like a relaxed focus when we're watching a movie or TV series in relaxed focus. So like it is a fun activity. It is a nice thing to do if you like watching movies and TV shows. But at the same time, we do have to be a bit more active, right? We can't just in our native language. So that's why I've said avoid just watching. So like you don't need to do anything sort of really studious or serious. I mean, all I would say is just watch with a notebook or like a bit of paper, a post-it note, right? So that you don't go crazy. And, you know, just while you're watching, maybe you want to note down a few phrases or expressions. But like the temptation is to maybe kind of, I'm going to write down every single new word and expression, but come at it again from that position of like, well, you know, what do I need? What would be useful to me? And while you're watching, if you hear an expression you think sounds cool and you think that you could use and you think it would be useful for you, well, like, why not write it down? And you can always check with the subtitles to ensure that you write it down correctly. And maybe you think, maybe you're not 100% sure what it means at this point, but the context of the film gave you an idea. And then afterwards you can go off and check, ask a native speaker, ask a teacher, look in the dictionary, whatever. So, you know, this way you're actually, you know, coming away with something written down, having done a little bit of work. And you can also use this notebook for doing some dictations, you know, so 7 expressions that you might get from a movie, or maybe 3 from a TV series episode. And that's enough, right? You don't have to fill it with like, you know, every single new thing you learn, but just a little bit can be enough to find that kind of, to break out of that habit that we all kind of have, where we're like, I just want to like passively learn a language, you know, like magically just watching films. And I know there's always somebody who says, well, that's how I learned a language. But, you know, we have to be realistic. Sometimes the people who say that, like they watched Friends in their bedroom as a teenager, like hours and hours per day. But, you know, we're adults now. We don't have the time to do that. So we do a bit less and we try to make it a bit more active. And not watch passively. That's all I'm trying to get at. Don't be 100% passive, and don't get upset when you can't just like relax on the couch and watch a foreign language movie or TV show with no effort and magically learn a language. It's just a mismatch of expectations. Okay, these are in order. 6, 7. So my kind of like personal philosophy at this stage now for movie learning, I just made that up, is movies are better together. So this comes through the work I've done with my students. And when I was learning French in 2005, I went to Montpellier for like a month or something, and I was in a language school. And one day our teacher brought in this movie, L'Auberge Espagnole. So it is a French movie, although it's interesting because bits of the dialogue, most of the dialogue is in French. Some of it's in English, some of it's in Spanish. There's even a little bit of other languages here and there. So it's about a group of people on an Erasmus year in Barcelona sharing an apartment, and they're all from different nationalities, but the main character is French. And so we watched this movie. I think it was just me and another student. I don't know why there was only the two of us, but so she put on the movie, and basically she kind of stopped it every time like maybe we looked confused, or there was like a cultural point that she needed to explain, or like a reference. You know, movies have a lot of references to other movies or whatever. So she would stop it and she would explain to us, you know, what's going on, why the people are laughing, and maybe, you know, why it was confusing for us. So that was a really amazing, that was so different to my experiences of, you know, borrowing video cassettes from the library of French movies. So they had no subtitles, no nothing. And I never used to really like research them. I just took what I could get hold of and then took it home and watched it, and then struggled to watch it and didn't know why. And, you know, so to have somebody like, wow, this person really gets that I don't understand a lot of this and they're really helping me. And what I'm saying is it's okay to get help from a teacher, and it's okay to, in fact, it's better to watch movies together. So, you know, I run a movie club. You don't have to be in a movie club. You could even just find another person, like another learner who likes watching movies, and you could agree to kind of watch the same things together and then discuss them. And the cool thing about that is when you watch with other people, sometimes they can help you. If you haven't understood something from a movie or a TV series episode, you can kind of compare notes and figure out like, oh yeah, what was going on in this part of it. And it's really nice to have other people filling in the gaps, and also to have other people. I mean, the reason I love doing my movie club is that people have, you know, everybody's kind of watching the movie through their particular lens, and just to hear like how my students experienced it and their interpretations of it, it's like they often notice things like I just didn't notice at all. And it's really lovely to bring together like these different perspectives. And the other advantage of watching, you know, movies together, however you want to do it, with like a club, or you could go on to there's loads of discussion boards on websites like IMDb, discussion forums online. It kind of makes the whole experience more holistic. So instead of just you watch a movie and then that's that, like you actually then turn it into an opportunity to speak the target language, or to write in the target language, to use those new expressions that you wrote down in your notebook. Like you can then, you know, it makes a lot of sense to use them in the context of discussing the movie, right? So, you know, find people to watch movies with, get help from a teacher if you need it. Yeah, discuss them together. Okay, so we kind of touched on this earlier when we talked about unconscious incompetence. So not knowing what you don't know. You know that people are talking fast, you know that you don't understand them, but you don't know why. And so one method we talked about to kind of solve that problem is doing listening and writing tasks, doing dictations, checking your work with the subtitles. I mean, I would also add as a broader point, don't only listen to slow speech. So I know like it's really tempting, and these kinds of things do very well. If you come out with an English podcast in slow English, it will be popular. If you talk slowly on YouTube, it will make you popular because people will be happy because they can understand. But then, you know, if they do have to interact with native speakers, you know, they're going to struggle because in real life, nobody talks like that, right? So we all have to kind of get out of our comfort zone and get used to how native speakers speak, assuming you're going to be talking to them. That's not always the case for English learners. It is for the people I work with, because they tend to live abroad. So this idea of fast, so people talk fast. So why are they talking fast? So we need to kind of look at like what is actually happening when native speakers talk. What is it that makes them sound so fast? And usually it's because they're changing words that you already know to make it easier for themselves to talk. So they're not interested in articulating perfectly all the words. They're just interested in getting their messages across as quickly and easily as possible for them. So that involves a lot of things like chopping off bits of words, well, sometimes deleting entire words, deleting sounds, mixing sounds and words together. So I've included, you know, the sort of classic example in French is how je ne sais pas, I don't know, becomes je sais pas when people talk fast. So that's a good example of, you know, we lose the ne, the je ne. I don't actually know 100% what happens. I just know it sounds like this. So you know, there's a lot of fast pronunciation of French that I've just picked up from living here, and I didn't know before I came that this happened. It's just something I've kind of learned over time. So this is the benefit of doing, you know, active listening tasks like dictation. You start to become more aware of these kinds of changes, like, oh, okay, actually those are words I know, but something weird happened. They got chopped off them, or they sort of transformed in some way. And this is again a situation where it can be good to talk with or to get help from a teacher who can kind of explain, like, here's what's going on. And that's a big part of my work, is kind of looking at my students' mistakes, realizing the logic of their mistakes, and then explaining to them, okay, here's what happened to this word, and that's why you heard it this way. Cool. We're getting to the end. And then, of course, there's a bit of tech you can use to make learning a language easier when watching Netflix or whatever streaming service that you use. So there are browser extensions that you can use. I mean, earlier I mentioned good old-fashioned pen and paper, but why not use a browser extension as well? So there's a browser extension called Language Learning with Netflix. It's actually changed its name since then, because I think it does more than just function with Netflix. It's now called Language Reactor. This is the little logo. If you go into the Chrome store and you type in Language Learning with Netflix, it should take you to the right place, or you can just put in Language Reactor directly. So it offers dual language subtitles. There's a pop-up dictionary, so you can like check as you watch, you know, translations of things. And there's also playback controls, so that could be cool for your dictations. You could rewind and listen again, etc., etc. So there is a bit of tech as well that can help, although you shouldn't only rely on tech. There's plenty of other things we can do. Okay, and that brings us to the end of the presentation part. So I'm gonna look at your questions, because I see there's quite a few of them. Let me see. Okay, and if you haven't like any more questions, you can obviously type them in. So I use subtitles in the target language, but always end up just reading rather than listening. Should I just turn them off? But then I end up not following the plot, especially in films. And somebody said slide 4 helps with this. So slide 4, yeah, was about smart subtitle strategies. So yeah, that would be my advice for that question. There is this danger that you just read, and I have had like English students who've said to me, I switch on the subtitles, I know every single word, but if I don't have the subtitles, I cannot understand. So the danger is, if you just read subtitles, you can end up in this situation where you're so reliant on them that you use them all the time. And then what do you do in real life where there are no subtitles? So yeah, play around with like turning them off and turning them on. You know, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Is there a facility to sort of slow down the dialogue a little, not to the point of distortion? Well, I would refer you back to my sweet spot Venn diagram. Maybe consider what you're watching. Is it too difficult? There might also be options in the browser extension I just mentioned, but I'm wary of always slowing down audio. But this also depends on your level. You know, you might be watching something that's just too hard for you at the moment. You know, something we didn't mention is that, you know, if you're a beginner or you're in the early stages of language, you might just be at the stage where you just don't have enough language. Like, there's obviously going to be stuff you won't understand because you haven't learned it yet. So that could be why. Where is the active part in this, and how will you learn grammar with this method? So the active part is doing things like, you know, watching with a notebook, writing down new expressions, doing the listening and writing activities. So I don't really teach grammar so much with my students. I do sometimes draw it to their attention, but you can choose your focus. So I said you could write down new expressions, but you could also write down bits of grammar that you want to, you know, look into. If you see a verb ending that you are unfamiliar with, you can write it down and then go ask your teacher. Transcript trip on YouTube. I'll just show you the slide again. I'm not going to go on to YouTube because that's complicated. So basically, under any YouTube video, there are these 3 dots, right? Any video on YouTube, you'll have these 3 dots. So you click on the 3 dots, you'll see this box. You click on show transcript, you will see the transcript. Try it the next time you're on YouTube. So bear in mind, this screenshot is from the desktop version. I think it's similar on mobile, but it's obviously going to display differently. So just be aware of that. You lost me a bit. Slide 5. Oh no, what was slide 5? Shorter the better. I was talking an awful lot about watching this film that wasn't helpful for me. Basically don't always watch movies. It's not always the right time if you're a beginner. Can you suggest any movies or TV series you'd recommend to Arab learners of English? Honestly, no, because I don't really work with Arab learners of English, so I don't really know what their kind of problems are. But if you can kind of maybe use this to guide you, the Venn diagram, the logic of that might help you. There's tons of people as well on YouTube or bloggers who give lists of recommended movies in English. That might also help. I'm sorry I can't help more with that one. Argot and Vernon, yeah, yes and no, but this is why we do listening and writing exercises. So people go, oh, movies are hard because there's too much Vernon and Argot, there's too much slang. Is there though? Like, until you actually look at the script, the transcript, the subtitles, it's not always because of slang that you don't understand. You know, people don't understand because expressions like je ne sais pas become je sais pas, and then they don't understand them. So it's not always what you think. So this is why you need feedback, and this is what the transcript or the subtitles can give you. So, you know, we can't always go on our like assumptions about what things are like. And a lot of people say that, and then they'll look at a transcript and be like, oh, actually, I know these words, right? But the words have changed somehow. Although obviously movies and TV series are an excellent opportunity to encounter a new language, new expressions, but often it's the same ones over and over again, especially in TV series where, like I said, often it's the same language coming back every episode, the same catchphrases, it's the same context. So you'll just learn over time. I watch a lot of true crime TV shows in French, because I'm in France. And so now, like, I know a lot of like judicial language to do with crime. I also watch property programs dubbed into Quebecois French. So now I've learned words to do with, DIY and sort of technical things in the house in like Quebecois French. It's just something I've picked up because, if you watch Property Brothers, which is Les Frères en Affaires in French, it's dubbed into Canadian French, and you just end up learning these things without even really wanting to. Okay. Oh, that's a really good question, Caroline. Is the language easier when watching dubbed American series rather than authentic French? I don't know. Well, yes and no. Yeah, I see what you mean, because it's voice actors. I think shows can sometimes be a bit easier, but it depends. Sometimes it's dubbed into Quebecois French, but usually their accents, like, it's kind of like TV presenter Quebecois, so the accent isn't very strong. Some of the words are a bit weird. I'm just gonna have a look at what I missed in the chat. Okay, lots of thank yous. That's good. Yeah, I'm sorry, I got slightly cut off at some point. Let me watch people talking about different movies to watch. Yeah, you lost me for a second. I'm sorry, that's my 4G connection disappeared. Hopefully you got all the information you needed. If not, ask me. Ask me while I'm still here. Okay, next question. Face-to-face fast talk is much easier. Yeah, it can. Yeah, because you've got the person right in front of you. But not always available. Can try to watch in native language, then other language with subtitles, and then other language without. So yeah, some of my students actually do that. So sometimes and then watch it in English. Also, we often watch in the movie club. We've watched a lot of like fairly famous Hollywood movies, but maybe from like 20 or 30 years ago. So often people have already seen them in their native language, just like on TV, you know. So they're like familiar with the film, they're familiar with the story. So watching it in English is not so daunting. It's that Reconnaissance Mission thing that I mentioned. You know, you're already familiar with like the names of the characters, the context, the story, you know, some basics. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. A brilliant webinar. Fantastique. Lots of brilliant tips. Yeah, I'm glad. That's what I'm here for. Thank you very much. You're very welcome, folks. Oh crap, have I gone over time? I can't even remember. Good, glad you enjoyed. You have to leave. Yeah, I'm going over time, so I'm gonna have to stop. When did I start? Half past 4. Okay, I need to stop because I've gone over. Sorry about that. Perfectly planned and timed. Oh gosh, I was speaking very fast because I wasn't sure. Yeah, Stan, everything's recorded. Although maybe when you rewatch the recording, I will be like breaking up, but you'll be able to see the slides, so that's good. Let me just check if there's another. Yeah, so that answers your question. Okay, I'm going to stop because there are other talks going on that I'm sure you want to get to. Thank you so much for being here, whether you were live or you're watching the recording. Take care. Bye.